The arrogant assessment general Vextar Morlane stood 8 feet tall on his 4 powerful legs, his crystalline carapace reflecting the cold light of distant stars through the observation deck of the neutral station Harmony Prime. His 6 compound eyes surveyed the docking bay below where a human vessel had just arrived. The ship looked pathetically small compared to his own battlecruiser, the Eternal Dominion, which cast shadows over 3 entire docking platforms for 2 centuries. Vextar had served the Zelanian Empire as their most decorated military commander. His people had conquered 17 star systems and brought order to the chaotic Outer Rim territories. The Zelanians were natural warriors, evolved from pack hunters on a world where only the strongest survived. Their society revered military prowess above all else, and Vextar was their greatest champion. The human delegation had requested this meeting to discuss their species joining the Galactic Defense Coalition. It was a formality that Vextar had performed dozens of times before. New species would arrive, demonstrate their limited capabilities, and then be assigned support roles far from actual combat. Most civilized races understood their place in the galactic hierarchy. Vextar Sade, Lieutenant Keshron, approached with measured steps that echoed through the observation chamber. The younger Zelanian's mandibles clicked nervously as he presented a data tablet containing intelligence reports about the humans. General, the preliminary assessment is complete, Keshron reported, his voice carrying the respectful tone appropriate when addressing a superior. The species designation is human, originating from a world they call Earth in the Sol system. Vextar accepted the tablet with one of his 4 manipulator arms, while his primary eyes focused on the data. What he saw confirmed his initial impressions. Humans were bipedal mammals, standing roughly 6 feet in height with only 2 arms and 2 legs. Their skin appeared soft and vulnerable, lacking any natural armor or protective features. Most disturbing was their apparent fragility. The reports indicated they could be seriously injured by falls that would barely inconvenience a Zelanian child. Their military technology appears primitive, Keshron continued, highlighting sections of the report. Simple kinetic weapons, basic energy shields, and fusion-powered vessels that our own forces abandoned 50 years ago. Their largest warship masses only a fraction of our smallest patrol craft. The general studied images of human soldiers in their combat gear. The armor looked thin and inadequate, designed more for mobility than protection. Their weapons were compact projectile launchers that fired small metal slugs, a technology so outdated that Zelanian museums displayed similar artifacts from their pre-spaceflight era. What is their combat experience? Vextar asked, though he expected the answer would be limited to minor skirmishes between their own kind. Extensive, sir, but only amongst themselves, Keshron replied with obvious disdain. They have been engaged in continuous warfare for their entire recorded history. However, this appears to be due to their inability to establish proper hierarchical order rather than any martial prowess. Vextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Species that fought among themselves were invariably weak when faced with organized external threats. It suggested poor discipline and leadership, exactly the opposite qualities needed for effective military service. Through the observation window, he watched as the human delegation disembarked from their vessel. 3 figures in simple grey uniforms walked with purpose toward the station entrance. Even from this distance, Vextar could see how small and fragile they appeared. The lead figure was clearly female, with dark hair bound efficiently behind her head. Her companions were male, one tall and lean, the other broader but still diminutive by Zelanian standards. Their delegation leader is Captain Alina Rodriguez, Keshrin informed him, reading from secondary files. Age 34 standard years, which is quite young for their species. Background in tactical operations and fleet coordination. She has never commanded more than a single ship. The general found this amusing. The Zelanians would never send someone so inexperienced to represent them in military discussions. It demonstrated either desperate overconfidence or complete ignorance of proper protocol. 20 minutes later, Vextar entered the main conference chamber where the humans waited. The room was designed for diplomatic meetings between species, of varying sizes and environmental needs, with adjustable seating and atmospheric controls. The humans had chosen simple chairs around a standard table, making no special demands or requests. Captain Rodriguez stood as he entered, offering a gesture that involved extending her right hand forward. Vextar had been briefed that this was a human greeting custom, though it seemed inefficient compared to the Zelanian practice of displaying weapon limbs to demonstrate peaceful intent. Jeanette Vextar Rodriguez said through her translation device, "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I'm Captain Alina Rodriguez, representing the United Earth Defense Fleet." Her voice was steady and professional, showing no obvious signs of intimidation despite facing a being nearly twice her height who could easily tear her apart with minimal effort. Either she was remarkably brave or too ignorant to understand the danger. Captain Rodriguez Vextar replied formally, settling his bulk into the reinforced chair designed for his species. "I have reviewed your preliminary data. Your people seek membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition." "That's correct, General. We believe humanity can contribute meaningfully to galactic security and peace." The statement was so absurd that Vextar had to suppress an amused clicking. These tiny creatures believed they could contribute to defending civilizations that had mastered space warfare before their species had invented agriculture. Rodriguez introduced her companions. Dr. Sarah Mitchell served as xenobiologist and cultural advisor, a thin woman with intelligent eyes who took detailed notes throughout the meeting. Commander Thane Blackwood was their military representative, a man whose scarred hands and watchful demeanor suggested actual combat experience, though likely only against other humans. "Your species has an interesting history," Dr. Mitchell commented. When invited to speak, the Zelanian Empire has established dominance through superior force and tactical excellence. We greatly respect your military achievements. It was appropriate deference, though Vextar noted the careful phrasing. Respect rather than fear, achievement rather than supremacy. These humans had diplomatic training, at least. However, Rodriguez continued, "We believe our own experiences might offer unique perspectives on warfare and defense." This was where most species made their crucial error, overestimating their own capabilities when faced with obviously superior competition. Vex had seen it countless times before. "Describe your military philosophy, Captain," he said, genuinely curious to hear what justification these creatures would offer for their obvious inadequacy. Humans believe that victory comes not from superior strength alone, but from adaptability, creativity, and the willingness to sacrifice for others, Rodriguez replied without hesitation. "We fight not just to win battles, but to protect what we value." The words sounded noble but meaningless to a practical military mind. Adaptability was useful, but useless without the strength to implement effective strategies. Creativity could not overcome fundamental technological disadvantages, and sacrifice, while honorable, was simply another word for acceptable losses in pursuit of strategic objectives. Commander Blackwood leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes fixed on Vextar. Primary visual organs. General, how do your forces typically engage enemies who refuse to fight by conventional rules? The question was unexpected and showed more tactical thinking than Vextar had anticipated. Unconventional enemies are suppressed through overwhelming firepower and superior positioning. Irregular tactics fail when faced with organized, disciplined forces. That's been our experience as well, Blackwood agreed, though something in his tone suggested deeper meaning. Eventually, conventional superiority wins. Dr. Mitchell consulted her notes and asked about Zelanian training methods and command structures. Her questions demonstrated genuine intellectual curiosity and revealed surprising depth of understanding about military organization. These humans were more observant than their technology suggested. Perhaps we could arrange a practical demonstration, Rodriguez suggested, as the formal presentations concluded. A joint exercise where we could show our capabilities in action. Rather than theory, Vextar considered the proposal. Joint exercises were standard procedure for evaluating potential allies, and it would provide definitive proof of human limitations. His own forces could easily handle any reasonable scenario, while the humans struggled with basic coordination. What type of exercise do you propose, Captain? Something realistic, she replied immediately. Perhaps responding to an actual threat rather than artificial scenarios. Intelligence reports suggest the Corvan raiders have been increasingly active. In the border systems, a joint patrol mission would serve dual purposes. The suggestion showed either impressive confidence or dangerous naivety. The Corvan raiders were genuine threats, organized pirates with modern weapons and experienced crews. They typically operated in small groups, making them perfect opponents for a training exercise, but they were still deadly enough to expose human weaknesses quickly. The Corvan situation is currently manageable, Vextar replied carefully. Perhaps a less dangerous scenario would be more appropriate for initial cooperation. Rodriguez exchanged glances with her companions, and Vextar noticed something pass between them, a moment of silent communication that suggested deeper understanding than their words revealed. With respect, General, we didn't request this meeting to participate in training simulations, Commander Blackwood said quietly. If humanity is going to contribute to galactic defense, we need to prove ourselves against real threats. The statement carried weight that their previous words had lacked. These humans understood the stakes involved and were not seeking protection or safe assignments. They genuinely believed they could face serious dangers. It was refreshing, even if tragically misguided. Very well, Vextar decided. Recent intelligence indicates 6 to 8 Corvan vessels operating near the Epsilon crossing trade routes. A joint mission to eliminate this threat would serve as an adequate test of human capabilities. Dr. Mitchell made additional notes while Rodriguez nodded approvingly. When do we begin, General? Immediately. My battle group will rendezvous with your forces at the Epsilon system within 48 hours. This will be an excellent opportunity to observe human tactics firsthand. As the meeting concluded and the humans prepared to return to their ship, Vextar found himself genuinely curious about the upcoming exercise. These creatures were more interesting than most species he evaluated, even if their ultimate fate was predictable. They would perform adequately against inferior numbers, demonstrate basic competence, and then be assigned to logistics or patrol duties where their limitations would not endanger. More capable forces, the Corvan raiders would provide perfect opposition, dangerous enough to reveal human weaknesses, but not so overwhelming as to cause unnecessary casualties. 6 enemy ships against his battlecruiser and whatever modest force the humans could field would result in quick victory and clear demonstration of proper military hierarchy. Vextar watched their small vessel depart from the observation deck, already composing his preliminary report. The humans showed promise for support roles and might eventually develop into useful allies with proper guidance and centuries of training under superior leadership. What he could not have imagined was that within 72 hours, everything he believed about warfare, strength, and the nature of predators would be completely destroyed. Asterisk, the awakening, the Epsilon system, had always been considered a minor trade hub on the galaxy's outer rim, consisting of 3 habitable worlds and extensive asteroid mining operations. When Vextar's battle group dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, he expected to find the usual signs of Corvan raider activity, disabled cargo vessels, scattered debris, and perhaps a few pirate ships skulking among the asteroids. What his sensors detected instead made his 4 hearts skip synchronized beats. General Lieutenant Keshran's voice carried barely controlled alarm as he read the tactical display. "I'm reading 43 distinct enemy signatures scattered throughout the system. Multiple ship classes, including captured military vessels from at least 6 different species." Vextar's compound eyes focused intently on the holographic display, materializing above the command table. What intelligence had described as a small raider problem had evolved into a full-scale invasion fleet. The Corvan pirates had apparently decided to establish a permanent base of operations, bringing together the largest concentration of criminal vessels anyone had seen in decades. "Where are the human forces?" he demanded, scanning for the modest fleet he had expected them to contribute. Detecting 5 human vessels at coordinates 7-7-Mark-4, the sensor operator reported. Configuration suggests 3 frigates, 1 destroyer, and their command vessel. Total mass approximately 1/3 that of our single battle cruiser. The mathematics were brutal. 43 enemy ships against 6 allied vessels, with the humans contributing barely enough firepower to matter in a conventional engagement. By every tactical doctrine Vextar had learned in 2 centuries of warfare, the only rational response was immediate withdrawal and reinforcement requests. A communication signal crackled through the bridge speakers, carrying the calm voice of Captain Rodriguez. "Genedo Vextar. We're reading multiple hostile contacts throughout the system. Recommend we proceed with mission parameters as planned." The statement was so absurd that several Zelanian officers turned to stare at their commander in disbelief. Mission parameters had assumed 6 pirates, not a fleet capable of threatening entire star systems. "Captain Rodriguez," Vextar replied carefully, "tactical analysis indicates enemy forces exceed our capabilities by approximately 7-1 odds. Standard doctrine requires immediate withdrawal and reinforcement." "Understood, General. However, human doctrine operates differently under these circumstances, requesting permission to demonstrate alternative tactical approaches." Vextar found himself genuinely curious despite the obvious insanity of the situation. These humans faced overwhelming odds that would send most species fleeing in terror. Yet Rodriguez spoke as if discussing routine patrol duties. "What do you propose, Captain?" The tactical display suddenly populated with new information as human sensor data integrated with Zelanian systems. Enemy ship positions appeared with unprecedented detail, including structural analyses, weapon configurations, and crew complement estimates. The humans had somehow mapped the entire enemy fleet in the time it had taken Vexstar to count them. The Corvan raiders have established defensive positions around 3 primary objectives, Rodriguez explained as the display highlighted key locations: mining stations for resources, command facilities for coordination, and captured civilian vessels for hostages. They expect us to either flee or attempt direct assault on their strongest positions. Commander Blackwood's voice joined the communication channel. General, human military history includes extensive experience fighting superior numbers through asymmetric warfare. We respectfully request permission to engage using tactics that may appear unconventional. Every instinct developed through centuries of successful campaigns screamed at Vexstar to order immediate retreat. The Zelanians had never lost a battle because they never fought unless victory was assured through superior force and positioning. What these humans proposed violated fundamental principles of warfare, yet something in their calm confidence suggested knowledge that he lacked. "Explain your tactical approach, Captain." Dr. Mitchell's voice replaced Rodriguez on the communication channel, carrying the precise tone of someone briefing military commanders. General Corvan's psychology emphasizes dominance through fear and overwhelming force. They expect enemies to respond predictably, either fleeing in terror or attacking their strongest positions. Human tactics focus on doing what enemies don't expect. The Corvan fleet is organized around captured vessels from multiple species. Blackwood continued the briefing. Different technologies, communication protocols, and command structures. They're powerful individually, but poorly integrated as a unified force. Vexter studied the tactical display with growing fascination. The human analysis was correct. The pirate fleet showed obvious signs of improvised organization, with vessels clustered by origin species rather than tactical function. "What do you intend to do with this information?" "We're going to make them fight each other instead of us," Rodriguez replied simply. The next 4 hours changed everything. Vexstar believed about the nature of warfare. The human ships dispersed throughout the system with movements that appeared random to conventional military thinking. They avoided the largest concentrations of enemy forces while positioning themselves near communication relays and supply lines. Instead of massing for attack, they spread out to become harder targets. The first indication that something unprecedented was happening came when 3 Corvan vessels near the outer mining stations simply exploded without apparent cause. Vexstar's sensors detected no weapons fire, no missile launches, nothing that explained the sudden destruction. "Captain Rodriguez, report status of those 3 enemy vessels." "Mining charges, General. The Corvans have been using captured civilian mining equipment to extract resources. We simply modified the explosive charges they had already placed and triggered them remotely." The explanation was so simple that it took Vexstar several seconds to comprehend the implications. The humans had somehow infiltrated pirate operations, turned their own equipment against them, and eliminated 3 ships without firing a shot. More explosions followed as human infiltration teams activated sabotage devices throughout the pirate fleet. But this was only the beginning of what Vexstar would later describe as the most terrifying display of psychological warfare he had ever witnessed. The humans began broadcasting messages across all Corvan communication frequencies, but not to demand surrender or threaten retaliation. Instead, they started spreading rumors and misinformation designed to create suspicion among the different pirate factions. Dr. Mitchell had apparently spent years studying Corvan social structure and knew exactly how to exploit their cultural weaknesses. The broadcasts suggested that certain ship captains were planning to betray their allies, that valuable loot was being hidden from communal distribution, that some crews were secretly negotiating with human authorities. Within an hour, the coordinated pirate fleet began fragmenting as different factions turned weapons on each other. Ships that had been defending mining stations started repositioning to protect themselves from former allies. Communication channels filled with accusations and threats as paranoia spread through the criminal organization. "This is impossible," Lieutenant Kesheron whispered as he watched the tactical display show enemy forces destroying each other. "No species fights like this." Commander Blackwood's voice carried grim satisfaction as he coordinated marine boarding operations against disabled pirate vessels. "General, human military doctrine recognizes that the most effective weapon against any enemy is often the enemy themselves. Make them afraid of each other instead of you." The Corvan raiders, who had seemed so formidable when united, now appeared vulnerable and disorganized. Human strike teams moved through the chaos with predatory efficiency, capturing ships whose crews were too busy fighting each other to maintain proper defensive watches. But the most disturbing moment came when Vextor witnessed human interrogation techniques firsthand. A captured Corvan captain was brought aboard the human command vessel for questioning about remaining enemy positions. Vextar expected standard interrogation protocols, threats, bargaining, perhaps enhanced questioning under controlled conditions. Instead, Dr. Mitchell sat across from the pirate in what appeared to be casual conversation, speaking quietly about the prisoner's family, his childhood, his fears and aspirations. She offered food, medical attention, and respectful treatment, while asking seemingly innocent questions about his crew and their operations. Within 20 minutes, the hardened criminal was voluntarily providing detailed intelligence about every remaining pirate position, weapon cache, and planned operation. He begged to be allowed to contact other ships and convince them to surrender before more violence occurred. "How is this possible?" Vextar demanded privately over a secured channel. "Humans understand that everyone wants to survive and protect what they love," Dr. Mitchell replied calmly. "Fear makes people fight harder. Hope makes them cooperate. Most species only know how to use fear." The final engagement occurred 6 hours after the operation began. The remaining Corvan vessels, reduced to 12 ships and completely demoralized, attempted a desperate assault on the human command vessel. They expected either easy victory against a small human force or glorious death in battle. Instead, they encountered something that would haunt Vextar's dreams for the rest of his very long life. The human ships moved like living predators, coordinating attacks within human precision while maintaining perfect defensive formations. Their weapons, those simple projectile launchers that Vextar had dismissed as primitive, tore through pirate armor with devastating effectiveness. But more terrifying than their firepower was their absolute ruthlessness once engaged in direct combat. The humans, who had shown mercy to surrendering enemies and care for civilian casualties, became something altogether different. When faced with those who chose to continue fighting, Captain Rodriguez's voice carried ice-cold determination as she coordinated the destruction of the remaining pirates. "All ships, weapons free. No quarter for those who harm civilians." The 12 surviving Corvan vessels were annihilated in 18 minutes of combat that demonstrated why humans had spent their entire history perfecting the art of war. Every shot was precisely placed, every maneuver calculated for maximum psychological impact on remaining enemies. The pirates found themselves facing opponents who seemed to anticipate their every action while responding with overwhelming violence. When the last enemy vessel exploded in a brilliant flare of superheated plasma, absolute silence filled the Epsilon system. Vextar stood on his command bridge, all 6 compound eyes fixed on the tactical display showing debris fields where 40 enemy ships had once threatened galactic commerce. 5 human vessels moved calmly through the wreckage, conducting rescue operations for civilian hostages while documenting evidence for legal prosecution. General Lieutenant Keshron's voice carried barely controlled terror. The humans eliminated. An entire invasion fleet using tactics we've never encountered. They turned enemies against each other, infiltrated secure positions, and conducted psychological operations while maintaining perfect battlefield coordination. The young officer paused before continuing with the question that would reshape Selenian military doctrine. Sir, if these creatures can do this to organized pirates, what could they do to us if we ever became enemies? Vextar had no answer because the implications were too terrifying to contemplate. For 2 centuries, he had believed that military superiority came from advanced technology, superior numbers, and disciplined organization. The humans had just demonstrated that true warfare was about understanding your enemy better than they understood themselves. Captain Rodriguez's final transmission carried the same professional calm she had maintained throughout the entire operation. General Vextar, the Epsilon system is secure. All civilian hostages have been recovered alive. We're prepared to transfer captured pirates to appropriate authorities and provide detailed intelligence reports for preventing future incursions. Captain Rodriguez Vextar replied after a long pause, "Your people have exceeded expectations. Thank you, General. We look forward to contributing to galactic security." As the human fleet prepared for departure, Vextar realized that everything he had believed about predators and prey had been completely reversed. The small, fragile-looking creatures he had dismissed as potential support personnel were actually the most dangerous military force he had ever encountered. They fought not with superior strength or advanced technology, but with perfect understanding of warfare as psychological manipulation, strategic deception, and precise application of violence when all other options were exhausted. They had spent millennia learning to defeat stronger enemies through intelligence, adaptability, and absolute ruthlessness when threatened. The humans were not seeking protection from stronger species. They were offering protection to species, to civilized, to understand what real warfare looked like. For the first time in 200 years of military service, General Vextar Morlane felt genuine fear, not of being defeated in battle, but of what would happen if these terrifying creatures ever decided that the Zelanian Empire represented a threat to galactic peace.